Welcome to the Life Leadership Podcast with myself, Leila Singh, all things coaching, career and personal branding. This podcast is for ambitious career professionals like you, wanting to create a life of choice and freedom, to be, do and have more through overcoming limitations, to develop new perspectives and insights, and to redefine your success, be that in work, health, relationships, and so much more. In today's episode, I'm speaking with Raj Singh. Raj is an accomplished leader in strategy and digital transformation. He's a board member and chair with over 35 years of global industry experience covering 3 continents and 22 countries. He champions digital transformation and corporate governance in the boardrooms to keep boards relevant and fit for purpose in our digital economy. The majority of his experience is in the private sector, with the latter 8 years developing growth strategy, placing corporate governance frameworks, and delivering organisational change and digital transformation strategy to the board of a $2 billion private equity group, the Finnish Ministry of Interior, the Justice Minister of New Zealand, and National Police Youth Council in the UK. Raj is a member of the Board of Governors of the University of Hertfordshire, a supervisory board member of Thames Valley Local Enterprise Partnership, and was chairman of the IOD Berkshire until October 21. He is a member of the Justice and Emergency Services Committee of Tech UK and was instrumental in shaping the India-UK Tech Forum. He also provides strategic transformation advice to the IOD and Tech UK. Raj has held executive management positions for multinational organisations like Oracle, Info Group, HCL Technologies, Hexaware Technologies, and Godrej, and he's a fellow of the Chartered Management Institute and Institute of Directors. In today's episode, Raj will be sharing with us his journey from corporate career to entrepreneur, unlearning and shifting your point of reference, the powerful distinction between connection and networking, cultivating relationships, being curious and impacting the lives of others, why your values are non-negotiable and why candor can be critical, and why living life on your terms becomes my work is my hobby. A great place to be. I'm sure you'd agree. So let's head over and hear what Raj has to say. Raj, good morning and welcome to the Life Leadership Podcast. It's great to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm really looking forward to a conversation today. So let's just dive straight in. First question I wanted to ask you is about your experience from spending, 35 years in your career, possibly more since we last spoke. So tell me, some of that's been in corporate leadership roles and smaller startup business, entrepreneurial businesses too. So tell me a little bit about that and the distinctions between them and your experience of both.
So, in fact, I really didn't keep on juggling between 2 things. Till 2012, I was in the big corporate world. Mm-hmm. My last job was running a $500 million business, which I had grown somewhere about close to $30 million to about $500 million in close to 5.5 years' time. So that was quite an exponential growth. But in 2012, I decided that I cannot make it to the CEO of the company because that was absolutely clear to me. The company was at that time 4.5 billion, but I knew I can't make it to the CEO. Mm-hmm. And frankly, for me, it was quite a very clear decision that if I can't make it to the CEO, do I really want to do this? And then the idea came to my mind was that what I really love is that it's strategy part of my job. I never liked the administrative part of the job. I always liked the strategy part of my job.
Strategy, right, yeah.
So, and I was reasonably hands-on even at that point of time in corporate world as well. And it was pretty much like, you will see me rolling my hands with a board and start doing things while my team is still there working with me. So I knew that I needed the strategic part. I didn't need the administrative part of it, that corporate politics part of it. I did enjoy corporate politics, but not to make a living out of it.
Of course.
So I really took a call that it's the high time for me to leave the corporate world and start with a small team of like-minded people, what I love to do, which is strategy. So from then on, it's about 10 years plus journey now. And as I said to you first time when we talked, for me, although I make a conscious decision, execution was not easy, I must tell you. Coming from a hugely corporate job into almost a startup, but not a startup with the people who are not known in this, a startup with the people who each one of us had our own stamp on the industry. But still, it was quite a bit of challenge. So the first thing for me, or my guidance to the people who really want to take that plunge, I hope a lot of them take that plunge, but it's not easy to take that plunge, is, we may think that we know everything, but actually not. What we teach people, we ourselves lack sometimes. And for me, the biggest learning from that was unlearning. When you come from that kind of experience and that kind of position, unlearning is the most important thing you should focus on. Because frankly, you have a huge amount of learning, and learning never stops anyway. So learning can keep on going for life. But unlearning is the most important part if you become a successful corporate leader to entrepreneur. If you become an entrepreneur by having a chief executive position of a 5 billion, 10 billion organization, then you don't have to do a lot of learning, because the moment you come on your own, people are lining up to put money behind you, weight behind you. They say, you know what, I've got 100 million watches. Can you take this watches, go and acquire something, and then build it up to 2 billion, 3 billion, 4 billion, and then we can do an exit where both of us can take a retirement. But that was not my case. I wanted to do strategic work. I didn't want to make a company which is going to be another 500 million. That was not my goal. My goal was to do things which I enjoyed. So frankly, when a couple of us gathered together, our key thing for us was, how do we make sure that we continue to do something where we are in control of things right from beginning till the end? So one of our key goals was not to grow beyond 10 people. How bizarre is that? Normally, when you go as an entrepreneur, the whole idea is to start up and then make it very big.
Yeah.
But our founding region was against that. So the amount of our learning that we had to do was substantive. And one thing a simple thing which I'll tell you is, in a month I told my executive assistant certain things to do, and one of them in the first month itself was fix up a courier company. The second was fix up 3 flexible office spaces. They're all bizarre, because frankly, in 6 months down the line, when she had the courage, she asked me, so why are we doing all this? I said, because that's what we do, to expand the business and build the business. Because that's what I did. When I started my European operations for my business, we were in 3 countries, and in 5.5 years, we were in 11 countries in Europe. So that was our, boilerplate template to do things. Pick up an office space, pick up office manager, pick up all the administrative supports that you need in that office. But then her point was that the point is, what you don't realize is you're burning money. And, you are building things for which you neither have substantial customer base, nor your value proposition has been accepted in the market. And that opened my eyes. So most of the things that we did in first 6 months were wrong. And we continue to do quite a bit of wrong things even till 1 year as well. So for me, that is something which is very important, that when you come from a big corporate job into becoming an entrepreneur, you should try to unlearn things. Because frankly, you don't need a lot of new learnings. You do need them, but initially you don't need a lot of new learnings. You need to unlearn things. You need to change your reference frame, because the reference frame that you have come with could become a baggage for you. It didn't become a baggage for me. I didn't burn a lot, but it was a baggage for me, because I was still trying to follow the boilerplate template, which had made me so successful in the corporate career.
Yeah.
So for me, that is something very important that, anyone who takes advice from me, I tell them that, first of all, decide what you want to do. I really wanted to remain as an entrepreneur. I didn't want to become from an entrepreneur to a successful corporate. And again, when you become an entrepreneur, it's very important for you to decide, do you want to remain an entrepreneur? Or do you want to make this into a corporate, another corporate? So basically, only your starting point has changed. I started with 25 million, made it $500 million, and now you're starting from zero. But the goal is still the same.
Yes.
So goal is still the same. You want to make it a big corporate. The only thing is the starting point has become different. You have gone far behind where you started in your couple of other corporate jobs. So yeah, that's important. But most of the other leadership skills are quite transferable. Empathy, working with people, transparency and honesty. And one other thing which I should share with is I talked to one of the entrepreneurs whom I knew for a long time, and I did ask him. He said, try to put a facade. And he said when he started, he will tell people he had 30 people, he had this manager, that manager. I said, why would you do that? He said, that's what you do when you are bootstrapping, that's what you do. You do not tell people, what you are. You tell people what people want to hear. I said, but that will lose my originality. So I didn't take a lot of advice as well. And then he told me, you know what, you are not going to make it. I said, why? He said, because, you're too corporate. I said, why being too corporate is contrary to being an entrepreneur? And somehow he couldn't answer, but he said, I can tell you, talk to anyone who has made it from zero to big, they will tell you that if you're too corporate, you can't make it zero to big. But frankly, where I am today, I have I have proved it wrong, but I didn't want to prove it wrong just for a purpose. But for me, it was very different. So what he was trying to tell me is compromise on my values and say that compromising your values is the necessary ingredient to be successful. So for me, that was not right. I stick to my guns. And of course, I didn't want to prove him wrong, but he got proved wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's really important as well, and it's something I've witnessed in this space. From people who have their startups to one-man band up to multi-million pound or dollar businesses, is that because, like you, I've come from that corporate background, and there's a certain way of going about things, and I think it's not about all the bureaucracy and red tape, but it is exactly what you said, the values. And it's something I talk about a lot as a starting point for anyone. What are your values? What are your non-negotiables? Because knowing that and understanding that will enable you to make decisions far more quickly and easily, because that's already kind of your underlying foundation for where you're coming from. And it's actually surprised, even shocks me in some cases, of how some entrepreneurs, smaller businesses do business based on looking at where I've come from and doing things in a certain way. And it's, like I said, it's not about making it difficult or bureaucracy, but there are those values and approaches, processes, systems, strategies, whatever you want to call them, that are fundamental. And also, values equal integrity. And I think that's one of the most important values you want in business, because people do business with people they know, like, and trust. So the value piece is so important. So thank you for sharing that. It's interesting what your colleague said to you about you need to compromise, and I've heard that said. I was like, we don't need to worry about it. I'm kind of like my values may be different. So it's a really interesting one.
He told me up front, you will not make it. I must say, I believe I'm quite candid, but frankly, that guy was more candid than me. He's a Scottish gentleman, and he did tell me, you're not going to make it. That means it was very conclusive.
Yeah.
He didn't give me even a chance to, argue. But that's his viewpoint. And, it's very important for us to realize that, everyone has an entitlement to their viewpoint. You don't have to subscribe to their viewpoint, but you have to look at their context, where they come from. He came from, getting out of the uni straightway into becoming an entrepreneur. So he has come from a very different kind of perspective. So for him, it was, he didn't have any money in his bank when he started his business. So maybe he thought the only way to make money is make money right from day one. So far as I was concerned, I wanted to enjoy what I wanted to do. So, again, he was not wrong. In his context, he's right. In my context, I was right, because frankly, for me, the entrepreneurship was almost like a passion and hobby combination. He was working for retirement. I was working, I work for hobby. Work is my hobby. I will never retire. It's not that I will continue to work 14, 15, 16 hours, but again, it's understanding the other person's reference frame, which I call as empathy. Having empathy is very important for me. So I would not say he was wrong. He was right in his own context. And I may not have been right at that point of time, but at least I have proved that my approach was right. I might be wrong.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you there. Everyone has their own view of the world. I talk about this often, about, the lens that we look at the world through, and that's driven by, our past experiences, our situation, our beliefs, our values, etc., etc. So we all have that. That's what makes the world an interesting place. But ultimately, you want to subscribe to understanding your own beliefs, values. Are they serving you? Are they not? You don't have to agree with someone else, but it's also important to recognize why they have that lens of the world, where that's come from. And as you said, if you've not worked in a corporate environment before, you've gone, straight into entrepreneurship, you don't know what you don't know. You've not experienced something, and therefore, your view of the world comes from your experience that you have had. So great point there. Thank you for sharing that. And just going back quickly to a couple of other things you mentioned was the unlearning. And I can absolutely agree there, just in terms of, again, doing what I do now and recognizing that there's still so much to learn, and actually what works in one environment isn't necessarily going to directly transpose itself into a small business. So it's being open to doing things differently and trying new things. And as you said, changing your point of reference, I think that's really important, because now you're dealing with a whole different situation when you're in a startup, entrepreneur, business, etc. So some great shares there. Thank you. So and tell me also about networking, because I know that's a big part of what you do. And so share a little bit of that with me, about nurturing relationships.
Honestly, I do not do networking, to be honest with you. I really do not do networking. For me, it's more about I connect with people, and the two are different things. So writing someone an invite to join your network on LinkedIn, and then 4 days after telling them what you do, is networking.
Yes.
Okay, so basically you want to feel good, and I do not believe that there is no place for that. There's place for everything, but I honestly do not do networking. I more of what I do is relationship building. So I really have a calendar of the whole year where there are about 30 people whom I meet at least once in a year in person, and not for 15 minutes coffee or so, mostly either for lunch or for dinner. There are 30 people whom I put in my diary to meet, and you will not believe, almost 2/3 of them have got no revenue line for me. They do not refer me to anyone, and they do not, basically there is no direct benefit for me doing that, but I've got deep relationship with those people. And relationships are quite temporary. They are very deep only till such time you maintain them. If you do not maintain them, the deep can become shallow and can become extinct very, very quickly, because people really have got no space. The digital economy has really taken a lot of space out of our life. We waste so much of our time in consuming unnecessary content. We waste so much of our time trying to bring our digital presence, which may not have any value for us, but we just feel good about it. I posted something 100 people saw. Now, whether those people saw and then felt, why this guy sent this to me, that we don't care. We all look at, that we all have become a scorecard holders. We just keep the scorecard. How many people connected with me? How many people saw what I wrote? How many people follow me? And there's a huge amount of peer pressure. And as you would have seen, the social media has created itself a serious problem for younger generation, especially, who have started seeing that as a symbol of acceptance or a single symbol of being relevant to the society, which is terrible. It shouldn't have been like that, but that is the way it is, because again, they are nascent minds. They have got a lot of blank canvas, and social media started coloring their canvas right from scratch, and therefore it has got a much bigger impact on people like you and me who can see through the social media. So no, I do not do networking. I do relationship building, and for me, there are two different things. So if you really look at networking is transactional. So it's very temporary, it's very transactional. It has got its own place, and again, it has got value for people who do that. But for me, it is not. For me, it's about building meaningful, relationships. So I build, deep human connections, and basically that leads to impact. So what I really, advise people is that first decide whether you want to network or do you want to do relationship building. I don't have great experience of networking, so I really can't advise on how you network, because I'm sure there will be so many people who will know that much better than me. There's no point in sharing where I'm not good at. But I'm reasonably okay on relationship building. And for me, the first starting point is gather. I always, every year I try to, I do take a holiday during the Christmas time. But one part of that holiday is to do a lot of self-reflection on a very concentrated basis. I do try to reflect every week, but I do try to reflect on a very heavily concentrated way during that Christmas period of 2 weeks. Not all the time, otherwise my family will put me out of the house. But but I do have dedicated time where I self-reflect. And one of that key point is reflect on what do we really want to achieve in next 6 months, next 1 year, next 2 years. I don't go beyond 2 years because no one knows anything what happens beyond 2 years anyway. So those planning cycle times have gone. And then I look at, so what I really want to, what kind of impact I want to make. And then, I lead to the curiosity. In fact, leading with curiosity is the key. And with the curiosity comes the compassion. So for me, that is very, very important. So the first step is that gather phase, what I call as gather phase. And then basically, the people that I want to build relationship with them is, then once I know what I am passionate about, what I want to do, what are my immediate objectives and goals, then when I try to talk to people, then I try to ask them. I never start telling people. I always ask them, so what are your goals? What are you trying to do? And then I immediately don't start making connections that, okay, so what can I do for you? Not that way. I try to ask them. I try to explore the individuals to look at where is the commonality, to understand their perspective, what are their goals, what are their objectives. Once I have understood what are their goals and objectives, then I try to, then see, okay, so I try to follow through. Then in some way or the other, whether I meet them next time in some meeting or, this could be people whom I work with on a daily basis, but I'm not deeply connected with everyone when I work on a daily basis. I go to boards. Not every board member is my pal, they're fellow board members. One or two of them are pals. So a lot of them I don't know. So when I talk to them on the sideline or before having, a cup of tea before the board meeting really starts, or having an informal chat once they finish the board meeting, I try to ask them what their goals are, what are they passionate about, what they're trying to do, what their personal circumstances are. And then I follow through with something to tell them, this is what I thought you said to me. Validation is very important, because again, experience is great, but experience could be killing. You can filter if you're highly experienced, you filter every information very, very quickly. And your experience starts coloring that filtration, and that is disaster. So frankly, I really believe that curiosity of a child you have to maintain, and experience is quite detrimental to maintaining that curiosity, because very quickly your subconscious starts playing in your head, and then you start covering things because you believe you're highly experienced. So being highly experienced could be very dangerous if you don't use it successfully in a right way. So I follow it through and then understand, what I understood was right or wrong, and then basically validate them. And then the last, then I try to offer them, I try to say, look, what you told me, frankly, I can't do much for you, but I know someone else who can do this for you. Do you want me to do that for you? So for me, it is, the third point is action, and the action is, it should be immediate. Now we have got mobile devices. Even while I'm going for a walk, I thought, you know what, I could get this done for this person. So immediately you can send them a text, right? You don't have to make a note. You don't. So I always believe in spontaneity. You have to do it very quickly. And then I try to do that. So normally my relationships are built on me doing something for people in the first place, rather than asking them, and what you do ultimately comes back. If it doesn't come back anyway, you did not do because you wanted something to come back. And that's why I say I'm not a good networker. I'm a good relationship builder. And my relationships are never built on basically any immediate benefits. They are built on common shared passion, shared thinking, something that you can share, and you can share year on year, which is not temporary in nature.
Yeah. And I just want to slow you down for a moment to that, what you shared there. And I've sat here smiling all the way through it because I loved everything that you have said. It's really, really powerful. Exactly as you said, networking is and can often be transactional. And I have this conversation often with clients, is that, because I think, and again, something I really advocate for is the importance of building, nurturing, cultivating relationships all the time, and it's not just about what you can get from it at all. I think for me, it's about having those deep, meaningful connections, enriching conversations, conversations that have you maybe have a new idea or insight, being able to support people. And as you said at the end there, it's not about what you can gain from the relationship, but oftentimes just as a consequence of being open, being giving to people, and being looking to how you can help them, you will get that support and that help in some way back, whether it's from that person or from somebody else, because of the nature of how you're showing up. And the way that you've articulated that just now, I absolutely love it. It is about building those deep human connections. It is about, looking to meet people in person and spending time with them. And again, getting to know about them. I love what you mentioned there. To the extent that so many people do that, is, I get it, and I'm sure you do, is they drop you a connection request, and then next thing it's like, I do all of this, let's jump on a call. And I'm like, you've not even asked me a single question about me, my business, what I do, what my challenges are, anything, to just show a bit of interest before you throw whatever you're selling. To the point now that I've become a bit more savvy to just not accepting certain connections, because what's coming with it. So what you've shared there is so important for people, I believe, to really start to recognize that, particularly in this era of everything's driven by social media and the likes, and the engagement, and the vanity metrics, as they're called, it's important to just take a step back from that and remember that the human connection, and cultivating deep relationships is so powerful. It's also so fulfilling and rewarding, and something I do so much. And just the other day, this week I did this. I reached out to someone who's in the job market. I met him once, I think 3 years ago or 4 years ago, at a networking conference, a Women in Tech conference, and I offered to help him a little bit with his job search and some other things he could do. That's it, right? Because he's showing that he's open to work. But for me, that's what we're here to do, is to support and help other people and bring them up with us as well. And it does make me cringe. And I've had people tell me this, and I've had it where someone suddenly finds himself in the job market, and it's like, oh, what am I going to do? and they send off messages to people saying, for example, can you write me a recommendation? And I'm thinking, and I've had someone tell me this, they didn't even know the person, but the individual had a potential interview at the company she worked at, and she was very senior there. So it's like, oh, can you write me? I'm like, why would they do, like, why would you think someone would put their neck on the line to write you a reference when they don't know you, they've not worked with you, you know, or can you help me out and introduce me some? And it's kind of like you're showing up now because you want something, as opposed to the whole reciprocity and sharing, and again, the underlying ethos of cultivating deep, meaningful relationships. Because I think when you, and you've almost, to some extent, the way you described it is helped me almost create a shift in perspective of how I can talk about it, because it's not just about reaching out to people when you need something. It's about it just being a part of day to day, about, like you said, I love what you said there about, you know, you have about 30 people that you make sure that at least once a year you will meet up with them and spend quality time with them. And all of these things are so powerful.
Now, means, see, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not an influencer either. So again, my view is not fit for everyone's view. But if you're not a celebrity, if you're not an influencer, then having 5,000 connections, 10,000 connections does not matter to you. What if any one of even 10 of those connections, if they can make a difference to your life, or you can make a difference to their life, that's what matters to you. So again, you chase the metrics which suits your ambition. You just do not choose a metric because someone else has chosen. So it's very important, you know, and these are the kind of things which come out of experience. So experience has got a great value. In early phase of your life, you are craving for recognition, and therefore you may just compete with people on others' metrics. Very quickly, in my own, wherever I led the businesses, I always looked at, you know, blue ocean thinking. So, you know, I always change the rules of the game rather than playing by the, you know, the rules which are already there. Because if I'm playing by someone else's rules, what chance I've got to win? Nothing. They have been playing that game for long with their own rules. So how am I going to really go and fight them? That is an arrogance if you think you can go and fight them out. So I've been reasonably grounded in most of my life. I'm not a celebrity, but I'm always at ease with life. To the extent where people come and tell me that, you know, you have no emotions. No, I have a lot of emotions. How do I connect with some people if I have no emotions? But the point is that having emotions and having emotional breakdown are two different things. You know,
of course, yes.
Having emotions does not mean that, you know, I'm highly vulnerable as well, which one of the points you wanted to talk about, I'll come to that later. But the point is, you know, you have to decide what your metrics are, and you should not change others' metrics. Other metrics would be how many people are following me because they are an influencer. Your metric should be something else. You know, how many of my connections share a passion that I'm passionate about, or how many of them help me contribute towards the goods that I want to do. So, you know, you define your metrics, and accordingly you decide whether you want to be a networker or you want to be a relationship builder. I'm a relationship builder. I'm not really a networker.
Yeah.
I hate going to these mass events where people keep on, where I call it, you know, typically speed dating examples. I don't. The more cards I collect, the more cards people give me and I give to people, the more noise I create in my life. I left corporate life to be an entrepreneur so that I can live life on my own terms. Why would I destroy that by, you know, getting it crowded again? After a long time, I got clarity. Why would I go and make it cloudy again? You know, all that labor that I did will go waste. So again, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't mean it doesn't work for others. It works for others, most probably.
Yeah, and I think you made a really valid point there in terms of, as you said, live life on your terms and understanding your goals. So coming back to your self-reflection piece as well, you know, get clear on what it is you do want. Is it the vanity metrics? Is it the followers and being an influencer? Or, you know, is it actually having the real deep and meaningful relationships with people? And you hear this so much now, particularly around mental health, where, you know, people will talk about the fact they're surrounded by people, or they've got thousands of followers, but they feel really alone.
Yeah.
it's nothing wrong with being alone, but feeling alone, feeling lonely is a different thing altogether. And that in my mind highlights what you're talking about in terms of the lack of the depth of the relationships that can have you be in that situation. So yeah, I'm so with you on this, because again, when I stepped into this world, you know, to your point, around me, there's a lot of people who are all about, you know, you got to get the followers up, the metrics on your posts and so forth. But actually, what I've really slowed down to and recognized is that the high quality clients that I attract that come towards me are in the main from the relationships that I have cultivated over the years completely. And it's just such a different and absolutely rewarding experience versus the whole pushing, you know, just to get loads of stats that you can shout about, but beneath it, there's a lack of substance. So yeah, I think we could go on this topic because there's so many aspects to it, but I'm taking a lot away, and I hope listeners are as well. Just moving on to another point I wanted to raise, and when we spoke previously, you talked about being okay with saying to somebody, I can't help you. So, you know, politely saying no. Tell me a little bit more about that.
No, it's candor, basically. You know, to me, candor is very important. Basically, the underlying theme is that candor. You know, you need to be candid. Now, again, in our British culture, I'm not born British. You know, I'm an immigrant who has adopted the local culture. But many times people do tell me that you're not so polite. Again, different reference frame. You know, if I'm just being polite in front of someone, that yeah, I will consider this, and that. So when I say I consider this, that creates a hope in the mind of someone else.
Of course.
Whom I said that. That builds an expectation, and then they would have planned something. And who knows, you know, on the back of that assurance that I have given them, what all they will start doing. And then by not doing a follow-through action on what I politely told them, which they misinterpreted most probably, or maybe I helped them to misinterpret, has a lot more repercussions. The other person would have invested, God knows, hours, days, on the, depending upon, you know, where they are in their life and where I am in life. It's all about differential, right? If I'm talking to a peer, they would not invest maybe more than a couple of minutes or maybe more than 1 or 2 hours thinking about, okay, how do I follow through this? But if I'm talking to someone who has just come to the corporate ladder or who has just started a business, for them it means a lot. You know, they would start making plans around it. They will start making some business thinking around it. They will start talking to people on the basis of something that I told them. They interpreted or they misinterpreted, or I helped them misinterpret. So for me, that is the wrong thing to do. It's very important to really not build wrong expectations. And that again comes back to the core values of mine, which is trust. You know, when you tell people something, they trust you. And by telling them, no, I can't help you, in my mind, you have still built that trust, because at least they trust you to tell them the way it is, rather than giving them ambivalent and then making them left vulnerable to make their own interpretation. And most of us, including me, we would like to hear what we want to hear. So whether someone said exactly they will help you or not, you thought, because they did not say no, you thought they will help you. So, you know, you can do the negative corollary out of it, although it was not an affirmative, but just because I was not negative, you consider that to be an affirmative. That is terrible, because then you start building plan on the back of it. So it's very important to tell people that, look, I can't help you. And then, you know, if you can say, but let me think about it, don't hold your hopes, but I'll come back to you if I believe I know someone who can help you. So, you know, qualify is my mantra. You know, when you talk to people, always qualify. Do not leave them into an absolute heap of faith, because that leads to, you know, people making wrong assumptions. So qualify is very important. If you are telling them I'll help you, also tell them, I'll help you, but I have got limited expertise in this area. I have got limited connections in that area. I do not know whether it will be of any benefit to you or not, but I will try to help you. But if you can't help you, just tell them up front, look, you know what, I can't help you. Forget about anything. If I think of something else, I'll come back to you, but don't keep your hopes high. Not that I want to be rude, but I just want you to be more practical. I think this is the way normally you like someone else to do to you. So why would you not do it to someone else? Being polite has got different kind of yardsticks. My reference frame is being polite doesn't mean that you raise hopes of people. How you say it is important, but that doesn't mean that you say them yes.
Yeah.
You tell them, I'm really very sorry. I really wanted to help you, but I can't help you. That is polite. I think about is not being polite. When you write in the mind of yours, you know that you will not even think about it the moment you left that person. Why say I'll think about it?
Yeah. I think a big takeaway of what you shared there, because I completely agree, is very much about treating people how you want to be treated. And, saying to someone, yes, I can help you, I can make an introduction, I can come back to you, and then not following through is leaving someone else with a potential expectation, then feeling incredibly let down, you potentially losing face or losing trust. And then it's also an impact, in my view, to a reputation that you have. So I think honesty in many cases in this context is absolutely fundamental. And following through, if you said you'll follow through.
So, means for someone else who will hate to say no to anyone because they believe it is impolite, for them, it is politeness. For me, again, it's my reference frame. It doesn't have to be everyone else's. For me, what they consider to be polite is almost, making someone vulnerable. Because I have set an expectation for someone who really wants everything to be always an output. So someone who wants to get something out of every meeting. They are vulnerable people. And what I have really done is exploited their vulnerability. So to me, again, it's a reference frame. And that is where the empathy comes in my mind always, that my point of view is my point of view. It's not an absolute point of view. So for someone else, it is polite because they believe culturally it is wrong to say no to anyone. For me, it is making someone vulnerable or putting a vulnerable person through another vulnerability. And just to cap it up, there are a lot of people who have worked for me in my early days of my career when I came to technology and consulting industry from oil and gas and construction. A lot of people who worked with me at that time are right now running businesses which are anywhere between 100 million to 500 million. None of them has made it to $1 billion. I wish they could, but they have not. And even when they talk to me now, or when I go and sometimes meet them in their own office, or in one of the meetings, they call me and they say, why don't you talk to some of my management team members? Most of them, the first line is, I still remember how much grind you put me through, but trust me, I would not have been what I am today if you would not have put me through that grind. So, it has validated my thinking that, if you are honest with people, if you try to tell people the way you think, it ultimately does them good in the longer term or midterm. It may not look good in the short term. They may get hurt for about 10 minutes, but in the mid to long term, it has been helpful because no one who has ever worked for me has ever come and told me, you were terrible to me and you made my life hell. They've always said, it did put me under pressure. It did challenge me. It did put me through onerous hard work, but that has paid off. And maybe that was better for me because if you would have told me that I'm doing quite okay, I would have been still serving at a mid-position level for my life.
Of course, exactly that. And that completely resonates for me because I've been in that situation when I was in the corporate space where, being really, really pushed and challenged in the role to keep doing more and, really stretching myself. But my take on that was that it pushed me and enabled me to grow and do things I probably wouldn't have done otherwise. Whereas there were other people who would look at that and actually see it as a negative. And like you say, there's no right or wrong in any of this. It's points of view, it's experiences, you know, how we choose to see the world and how we choose to live our life. So all of what we're talking about here isn't necessarily for everyone, but I think there's a lot that can definitely be taken away from it.
It's for me, you know, it's very simple. You know, being a popular leader and being an effective leader are not two sides of a coin. They could coexist. It's the question of proportion, which proportion you want to go to. So if you try to trade effectiveness for popularity, I don't think, for me, it is not the right leadership. It's time to balance both. You know, you don't have to be, you know, like Elon Musk or Larry Ellison. I didn't work for Elon Musk, but I did work for Larry Ellison. I know how difficult it was for people in the top team. So you don't have to be to that extent, but they are very successful people as well. So as you can see, you know, even on any one of the extreme ends, you could be still very successful, but that's not my leadership style. The way I have made my life, whatever little I've made out of it, is very simple. You know, be proportionate between popular and effective leadership, but do not try to trade one for other.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way to end this. And what I will say to you is there's a lot more that we can talk about. And I think the best thing for us to do is to look to have another conversation, which can focus a lot more on some of the, you know, more technical areas and digital transformation and your experiences of that and how to maintain that balance, which you've kind of touched on briefly, between the physical and digital worlds, as well as the world of AI. What I will say, Raj, is thank you so much. This has been incredibly insightful, both for me and I'm sure for listeners. There's incredible value that you have shared here and perspectives that can open people's eyes to actually a way of showing up in the world, a way of being, of, you know, again, coming back to relationships, because that is so powerful and so key to our day-to-day experiences. So I'd like to thank you for that. And I definitely feel that we should continue this conversation to touch on some other areas as well. But for now, I'd like to say a huge thank you for your time, for your openness and sharing. And yeah, we'll look forward to speaking again.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you. I hope the listeners will gain something from this. At least they should not commit the mistakes that I have committed. That's more important.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already done so. And if you enjoyed and gained value from today's episode, then do please leave a review telling us your key learnings and what you enjoyed the most. And do please share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can spread the word on life leadership, creating a life of choice, freedom, and new possibilities. Connect with me directly on LinkedIn, and if you would like to learn more about how we can work together, either DM me on LinkedIn or email.